Hi there, welcome back to Mysteries Channel. Thank you for clicking on my video. I really appreciate it. I apologize that I did not make a video last week. Trying to get my kids all set up for school this year. We'll just have to see how that goes. So, in my last video at the very end, I had a fleeting thought. What if the snake in the garden was not an actual snake, but an ancient being that knew of an ancient religion? A religion that predates the religions that we have now, may or may not have influenced it, and was something that was shared culturally around the globe. Because we all have the same stories. Same story, just the names and the locations are different. Interesting. If you did not watch the first couple of Mystery Schools videos, I would definitely do that because I'm not trying to repeat the same information that I said in those ones. I think it gets really old for anyone that's watching my videos to hear me say the same things over and over and over again. So watch those first, and even maybe the Adapa video and then the first two Mystery School videos, because that'll make this one make a lot more sense. Okay, let's just get on with it. The half fish, half snake people. They show up all over the world in ancient times. In a video way a long time ago, before I even knew of these beings, I spoke of the king named Cecrops I, the founder of Athens. He is a fishman. The name Cecrops was not of Greek origin, according to Strabo. It might have meant tail face and was originally called Cercops. It's said that he is born of the earth itself and was accordingly called native, and he is described as having his top half shaped like a man and his bottom half shaped like a fish. Hence, he's also said to be of two natures. He is the culture hero of Athens. He introduces marriage, stops the sacrificing of living things to Zeus, and introduces a form of democracy. Before Cecrops, men lived without the rule of law and spoke one language. Cecrops also introduced the citizens of Athens to a form of early democracy. Not for rulers or kings, obviously. You're not going to vote those people in. There's mystery schools for that, people. No, but maybe for certain reforms to the city. He ruled for 50 years, and in his time, men and women participated in elections. Now get this. I'm not going to go over the entire story, but long story short kind of story. It is said that Poseidon and Athena, they're chomping at the bit. Both want to be the god worshipped for the city of Athens. They want to be the patron deity. They're doing all these different things to prove to the people that they are going to be the deity. And eventually Cecrops is like, you know what? Enough is enough. We'll hold an election for this. All the men vote for Poseidon and every woman votes for Athena. Long story short, nature picked the goddess. Also, something else crazy here. The Greeks believed that Cecrops came with a band of colonists from Sais, Egypt, a place that keeps showing up in my readings. Sais is the place where Solon went and learned of the cataclysms that erased history at intervals. I talk about it in Plato's Cataclysm video, and in that video we also talk about Niet or Nut. Nut is the Egyptian equivalent to Athena. Is it possible that Cecrops is the Hellene equivalent to Enmerkar? Another account I found is in China, and again, I find it fascinating. According to the classic of mountains and seas, Fuxi and Nuwa were the original humans who lived in the mythical Khnum mountain. Fuxi and Nuwa were the original humans who lived on the mythical Khnum mountain. Today it would be called the Hechuan. One day, they set up two separate piles of fire, and the fire eventually became one. Under the fire, they decided to become husband and wife. Fuxi and Nuwa used clay to create offspring, and with the divine power, they made the clay figures come alive. These clay figures were the earliest human beings. Tell me that this doesn't sound familiar to you guys. In a couple of ways. It does remind me of the Navajo creation story, and gosh, there's a lot of Sumerian aspects to it as well. And not only that, but let's appreciate the appearance of these two here. They definitely look like a couple of Cecrops figures, wouldn't you say? Also, doesn't it look like he's holding a tool that looks like a square? You know, the square and compass that we see on other imagery? Let's continue. In the beginning, there was as yet no moral or social order. Men knew their mothers only, not their fathers. When hungry, they searched for food, and when satisfied, they threw the remnants away. They devoured their food, hide and hair, drank the blood, and clad themselves in skins and rushes. Then came Fuxi. And he looked upward and contemplated the images in the heaven, and looked downward and contemplated the occurrences on earth. He united man and wife, regulated the 5 stages of change, and laid down the laws of humanity. He devised the 8 trigrams in order to gain mastery over the world. It is said that he is considered the originator of the I Ching, and that the messages came to him on the back of a dragon horse that came out of a river. Enter the Asian dragon. Now, I know when people look for information about mystery schools, I think for the most part they're looking for 2 characters specifically, Thoth and Hermes. So let's go over these gods and see if they are in any way connected to the Sumerian gods that we talked about in the past videos. Worship of Thoth began in Lower Egypt, most likely pre-dynastic period, 6000 BCE to 3150 BCE. Well, that's if you believe the timeline is reliable. I personally don't. I think that it could have gone much further back than this even. Thoth is the Egyptian god of writing, magic, wisdom, and the moon. He is most commonly depicted as a man with the head of an ibis or a seated baboon, or with a lunar disc above his head. He is also the patron god of scribes, and it is said that scribes would pour out 1 drop of their ink in Thoth's honor before they began their daily work. You know, pouring a little out for their homie. In the underworld, he appeared as an ape, Ani, the god of equilibrium, who reported when the scales weighing the deceased's heart against the feather were exactly even. The ancient Egyptians regarded Thoth as 1, self-begotten and self-produced. He was the master of both physical and divine law. He is credited with making calculations for the establishment of the heavens, stars, and earth, and everything in them. The Egyptians credit him as the author of all works of science, religion, philosophy, and magic. The Greeks further declared him the inventor of astronomy, astrology, botany, the science of numbers, mathematics, geometry, surveying, medicine, theology, civilized government, the alphabet, reading, writing, and oration. They further proclaim that he was the true author of every work of every branch of knowledge, human and divine. Thoth was not his real name, though. This was his Greek name, and it's something that threw me off. I had a hard time connecting him with the group of gods, although a lot of things check off in the right places, you know what I mean? But Thoth isn't even his real name. His real name is Jehudi, or we think it sounded like Jehudi. Jehudi translates to he who is like an ibis, and in reality, the ibis form is the form that we're most familiar with. Oddly, right? He's a birdman. However, the most ancient depictions of Jehudi would be that of a baboon or a monkey. The depiction of the baboon comes from many myths that start and end the same way. Basically, Ra has a daughter who disagrees with him on some matter or another. She ends up leaving, vanishing into a far-off distant place, many times the desert. She is a very strong individual. She cannot be coerced or forced to come back. He needs to find someone who uses cunning, perseverance, and humility. In comes Jehudi. Jehudi is sent out to go get the goddess out of the distant land. When he finally brings her back, he returns with her, and always the eye of Ra is with them. Also, something interesting happens. When the goddess comes back, many times, almost every single time, she brings back a improvement to civilization with her. Thoth is also the leader of the Ogdod. The Ogdod are the group of 8 gods, 4 gods and 4 goddesses. They originate from the city of Shmun, or Kemenu, meaning 8 city. Known to the Greeks as Hermopolis, the Greeks call the city Hermopolis because they equate Hermes with Thoth. The Ogdod represent a stage of the cosmos prior to the appearance of land and light. They are also known as the Hihu, or the Infinites, maybe another way to say the Immortals. They are also often translated as the Chaos Gods. Their names are Nun and Nunet, the Abyss, He and Hehet, the Unlimitedness, Kek and Keket, the Darkness, and Amun and Amunet, the Hiddenness. Amun and Amunet in most ancient times were known as Tenem and Temenet. Now I want to go to this cylinder seal here. What this depicts is Thoth, and this comes from Iran. So right there we have a connection to the Near East. Now Thoth is on the left side, the man in the middle with his 2 arms out. It appears as though he is holding 2 griffins at bay. This is not how we typically see Thoth, right? We usually see him as either a baboon or as the ibis man, the bird man. However, we know that this is Thoth because of the inscription. The inscription says, "Thoth is a protection over me." Interesting. Another little tidbit for you. that I find fascinating is that in the Coptic and Egyptian calendars, Thoth had a month that was named after him. It is the first month of their calendar. This month lies between September 11th and October 10th in the Gregorian calendar, the calendar we use today. So to the ancients, September 11th would have been their New Year's Day. Interesting indeed. Okay, on to Hermes. Hermes is the winged herald and messenger of the Olympian gods. In addition, he is also a divine trickster, the god of roads, flocks, commerce, thieves, and the inventor of speech. Hermes was the only Olympian capable of crossing the border between the living and the dead. He is also able to move quickly and freely between the worlds of the mortals and of the divine, aided by his sandals, of course. Hermes plays the role of soul guide, or the conductor of souls into the afterlife. Archaic artists portrayed Hermes as a mature, bearded man. This is important for two reasons. One, it shows that over time he evolved, because later on he is usually depicted as an athletically built nude youth. 2, the beard usually signified age and knowledge, or dare I say, broad understanding. Hermes' wand, a short winged staff entwined by 2 identical serpents, has magical powers, bringing sleep upon people or rousing them from it. It is likely that Hermes is a pre-Hellenistic god, though the exact origin of his worship and its true nature remain unclear. Frothingham made the connection that Hermes may be the Mesopotamian snake god named Ningish-Zeta, a god who serves as a mediator between humans and the divine, also depicted as a caduceus. Hermes was the god of birds of omen, birds dispatched from the heaven under the divine inspiration of the prophetic Apollon. Only seers under the god's patronage could distinguish birds of omen and interpret their divine messages. Hermes also guided the souls of the dead into Hades. Hermes is also the god of the interrelated arts of astronomy and astrology, and there is also the connection with Hermes Trismegistus, who would be Hermes thrice great, or 3 times great Hermes. He is said to be the author of the Hermetic Corpus, a series of sacred texts based on Hermeticism. Ningish-Zeta, a Mesopotamian deity of the underworld. He is the patron of medicine and also considered to be a god of nature and fertility. His name in Sumerian translates as Lord of the Good Tree. Remember in the Adapa video, he is one of the guardians of An's palace, someone who is able to go back and forth from earth to the heavens freely. He is sometimes depicted as a serpent with a human head, sometimes as a bearded man, as in this votive, and sometimes as the caduceus. Now, let's look at this votive. Gudea is being led by Ningish-Zeta into the presence of a deity who I believe is Enki because of the flowing water from him. He's the one who is seated on the throne. This is from Girsu, Iraq, 2144 to 2124 BCE. And now let's look at the official seal of Gudea. This seal depicts a very similar scene, right? Now this is King Gudea's official seal, and what do we see? We see Enki seated. From him pours forth waters into the jars and out of him. The deity that is standing next to him would be Ningish-Zeta. Also, it appears as though he has water coming out of his shoulders. This is a depiction stating that these are people with broad understanding. He is holding the hand of King Gudea. I believe that this is a depiction that shows that he is being initiated as maybe what we would call an Apkallu, a person of royal lineage with the broad understanding of Enki. In the Adapa legend, Ningish-Zeta goes under the name Gish-Zeta, and he is one of the 2 deities that are said to have disappeared from the land. The element Ningish-Zeta is judge, appears in personal names in the Neo-Babylonian period around 1 millennium BC. He is also associated with the Hydra constellation, which is connected to Mulapin. The Sumerian god Ningish-Zeta, accompanied by 2 griffins, is the oldest known image of snakes coiling around the axial rod, dating from before 2000 BCE. I personally think that Ningish-Zeta is the coming together of the teachings of Enlil and Enki. Ningish-Zeta is connected to Enki through broad understanding. However, he is the son of Enlil, and I believe that the Birdman were the understanding of divination connected with Enlil. Just my thoughts. I also don't think it's a stretch that Hermes, Thoth, and Ningish-Zeta represent the same deity. All right, let's go over who I think is the equivalent to Enki. In Egypt, I believe the equivalent to Enki is a man named Khnum. I just want to say this real quick. Earlier in the video when I talked about Thoth and the Agdod, they came from the city of Kemenu. Remember that. All right, Khnum. Khnum was one of the earliest known Egyptian deities, originally the god of the source of the Nile. He is said to be the creator of the bodies of human children. He created these children at his potter's wheel, and then he would place them into the mother's womb. He's also described as having molded the other deities, and his titles were divine potter and lord of creating things from himself. Much like Enki, right? He's connected to water. He is connected to the creation of man. Khnum means builder. He is one of the most recognizable gods. Although he is depicted in several different ways, he usually has the head of a ram and the hands of a man. When Egyptians began worshiping Khnum, he had long corkscrew horns. He typically wears a white crown and is holding a jar with water coming out of it. Now I'm just going to ask you, looking at this picture, could the corkscrew horns have been water originally? Let's just compare Khnum to Enki. Now Enki is holding a jar, and in that jar water is coming out. Below him or beneath him, there are 1, 2, 3 jars collecting water. Now when we look, Khnum is holding a jar, water is coming out. We don't see any beneath him, but in the hieroglyphs, what do we see? 1, 2, 3 jars being held. I'm just going to say they're probably there to collect water. Remember the ancient Egyptian labyrinth video I did with Lake Moeris? The pyramid complex and the labyrinth were originally a temple to Hephaestus. At least that's what Herodotus said, as he always lists the gods by their Greek names. Interestingly though, water check, underground temple check, and an original god of worship check. Hot damn, maybe. I'm just saying, maybe. But then there's Poseidon. I found this regarding Poseidon, and I think it is fascinating as heck. Let's see what Herodotus said. I quote, "What I say here is that which the Egyptians think themselves. But as far as the gods whose names they profess that they do not know, these I think they received their meaning from the Palestinians, except Poseidon. About this god, the Hellenes learnt from the Libyans. For no people except the Libyans ever had the name Poseidon from the first, and have paid honor to this god always. Nor, may it be added, have the Egyptians any custom of worshiping heroes." Also very interesting is that Plato states that the Atlanteans worshipped Poseidon, and also that the Libyans were subjugated by the Atlanteans. Remember, that was the very end of their domain before they went on to try to conquer the rest of the world. If I was going to hazard a guess here, I want to say that Hephaestus might be related to Enki. I don't know. I can't say for sure, but I'm very, very, very certain that Khnum was a depiction of Enki, and possibly I believe that Hephaestus is. But you can see quite plainly in all the gods that over time they evolved to look very different from their original depictions. Anyway, if you guys liked what you watched, please hit subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you know when I'm posting another video. And I just want to say thank you, and you guys have yourselves a very great day.